My name is Margaret Lane. I'm 38 years old, and I've always done things the right way. The steady job, the long-term relationship, the supportive older daughter role. I've never been the flashy one. That role's always belonged to my younger sister, Claire. Claire is 5 years younger than me, and ever since we were little, she had a way of walking into a room and making everything about her. She was the wild one, the unpredictable one. Our parents, especially our mother, doted on her like she was made of gold. I was the responsible one, the one who made space. I met Thomas 6 years ago at a local charity fundraiser. He was charming, polite, and stable, the kind of man I thought would never look twice at someone like Claire. He worked in finance, came from a good family, and had this calm, grounded energy that made me feel safe. After a slow and thoughtful courtship, he proposed to me last Christmas. It was the quietest, happiest moment of my life. I never imagined Claire would be interested in someone like Thomas. She always went for men who were flashy, reckless, unpredictable, like her. So when she showed an unusual level of interest in my engagement, I brushed it off. She said she was just excited for me. I didn't see the warning signs, not at first. She insisted on helping me with the wedding planning. She even said I could use her contacts to book the Stonefield Gardens, a beautiful private venue that usually had a 2-year wait list. I thought it was generous of her. I didn't realize she had already planted seeds behind my back. 3 months before the wedding, Thomas changed. It was subtle at first, late replies, less affection, a strange distance that crept in like fog. When I asked, he blamed stress at work. I believed him. That's the kind of woman I am. I give people the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't until I called Stonefield to finalize the flower arrangements that I discovered the venue was no longer booked in my name. When I asked who had taken the date, the woman on the phone hesitated, and then she said, "It's reserved under Claire Donovan and Thomas Emery." I don't remember how I got home. All I remember is standing in my kitchen, holding the phone, trying to breathe. The betrayal was like a physical weight pressing on my chest, and then the text came, from Claire. "I'm much better than you. You are nothing compared to me." She didn't even try to lie. She didn't hide it. She celebrated it. And that was the moment I knew. If she wanted a performance, I'd give her one. Margaret Lane, 38, lived a steady and responsible life, always overshadowed by her younger sister Claire, who was impulsive and adored by their parents. Margaret got engaged to Thomas, a grounded, stable man, and trusted Claire to help plan the wedding. But she discovered, too late, that Claire had betrayed her, not only stealing her fiancé, but also the wedding venue. Claire didn't hide it. She gloated, sending a cruel text, "I'm much better than you. You are nothing compared to me." Margaret was devastated, but something shifted inside her. If Claire wanted a performance, Margaret would give her one. Story. The next morning, I woke up in a house that felt like someone else's. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall for nearly an hour. My phone buzzed. Well-meaning friends, asking about wedding details, bridal showers, flower colors. I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? That my sister had taken my life apart piece by piece and proudly walked away with the ruins? I drove to my parents' house later that day. I needed answers, comfort, something. But the moment I walked in, I felt the weight of unspoken things. My mother was in the kitchen, humming and preparing tea like it was any other day. My father sat silently by the window, flipping through a newspaper he wasn't reading. When I told them what happened, the silence was unbearable. My mother gave a tight smile and said, "Claire told us she and Thomas had fallen in love. Things happen, Margaret." "Things happen?" I repeated, choking on the words. "You're telling me you knew?" She didn't answer directly. My father glanced at me, his mouth pressed into a flat line. We didn't want to take sides. That was the final break. They had known. They had watched it unfold and chose to say nothing. My mother, ever the peacemaker, dared to say I had always been the stronger one, that I'd handle this with grace. As if betrayal was something to quietly fold and place on a shelf. I left without finishing the tea. I didn't cry again that day. Instead, I went home and opened my laptop. I printed the guest list, the one Claire had no access to. I looked at each name, each address. I remembered who had supported me, who had watched me grow, And then I started writing letters. Not emails. Handwritten letters. The kind people don't forget. In each one, I explained what had happened. No dramatics, no slander, just facts. Claire had taken the venue and the fiancé. The wedding they were about to attend wasn't mine anymore. It was hers. And if they still chose to go, that was their decision. I signed every letter the same way. Thank you for standing by me, even in silence. Margaret. Within days, the phone started ringing. Some called crying. Some were furious. And a few confessed they had sensed something was off with Claire. One even said she'd heard Claire bragging about how easy it was to take what I didn't deserve. But Thomas never called. Not once. He disappeared entirely from my life, like someone had scrubbed him from the edges. I kept waiting for an explanation, a note, a call, anything. But deep down, I knew. He wasn't going to justify it. He didn't think he had to. That silence told me more than any apology ever could. 3 days later, Claire called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was sweet and fake, soaked in that syrupy charm she always wore when she wanted something. Maggie, she said, I think we should talk. You're being a little dramatic. Let's not turn this into a scene, okay? A scene. She took my wedding, my fiancé, and now I was being dramatic? I deleted the message. That evening, I sat with a glass of wine and pulled out an old notebook, the kind I used in college to map out papers. I started writing down what I knew about Claire. Not just facts. Patterns. She had always gotten away with things, and not by accident. She was clever, and she manipulated the people around her by staying just inside the lines of what could be excused. I remembered the time she borrowed money from our uncle and forgot to repay it. The way she cried her way out of a shoplifting incident in college. The string of boyfriends she'd taken from other women. Always smiling. Always pretending it was someone else's fault. And people believed her, because she was pretty and loud and acted like the rules didn't apply to her. But this time, I wasn't playing along. I started getting texts from old friends. Some said they'd spoken to Claire, that she was painting me as bitter and controlling, that she had no choice, that Thomas had been miserable with me. And that was when it started to click. Thomas had been distant in the final months, not just distracted, detached. He would ask questions he already knew the answer to, forget important dates, twist little things I said into criticisms. I chalked it up to stress or cold feet, but now I saw it for what it was, the beginning of his exit plan. And Claire? She had been planting seeds in his ear for months. Quiet, strategic sabotage disguised as concern. I wasn't even angry anymore. Just clear. They deserved each other, truly. But that didn't mean I was going to let them rewrite the narrative. When the engagement announcement hit social media, a polished photo of Claire's hand on Thomas's chest, her ring glinting in the sunlight, the comments began to roll in. Some congratulated them, but others asked pointed questions. Isn't this Margaret's ex? Wait, wasn't this her venue? What happened here? Claire tried to control the damage. She posted a long caption about finding love in unexpected places and how life doesn't follow a script. But the comments kept coming, and not long after that, I received a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Natalie Carter. She and I had worked together briefly 5 years ago. She said she had a story I might want to hear, something about Claire and a man she once dated and destroyed. Natalie and I met at a quiet cafe tucked behind the town square, one of those places that still served real tea in porcelain cups and didn't rush you out the door. She looked older than I remembered, more tired, like someone who had fought too many invisible battles. But when she saw me, her expression softened. We hugged like old friends, though we hadn't spoken in 5 years. I followed everything, she said gently. I'm so sorry, Margaret. I wish I could say I was surprised. Her words sent a ripple of unease through me. You said you had a story about Claire? She nodded. You remember Mark Kettering? I dated him briefly after we worked together. The name rang a bell. He'd been a quiet, decent man. Natalie's face darkened. Claire pursued him behind my back, not in a bold, open way, in whispers. She made up lies, said I was emotionally unstable, that I'd cheated on someone before. She painted herself as this sweet, misunderstood woman who just happened to connect with him. Sound familiar? I felt my stomach twist. She made me look like the problem, Natalie said. By the time I realized what was happening, he was gone. And Claire? She ghosted me. No apology, no confrontation. Just vanished, like I never existed. And 2 months later, she dumped him too. Said he was too boring. That was Claire's pattern. She didn't take people's partners because she loved them. She took them because she could. It was about power, control, proving she was the one worth choosing. She's dangerous, Natalie said, not in the obvious way, in the way that makes people question what they saw with their own eyes. After Natalie left, I sat alone for a long time. I wasn't angry, not in the way I had been before. I was certain. Claire didn't just stumble into this betrayal. She had practiced it, refined it, and perfected it. I spent the evening going through old texts between me and Thomas, reading between the lines. The changes were there, clear as day. Little digs, quiet withdrawal, selective memory. Claire had been laying the groundwork long before the proposal. I looked at the guest list again. Not the original one, the new one I had started drafting. The one that included people like Natalie, people who had been discarded by Claire over the years. I wasn't planning a wedding. I was planning an invitation-only reckoning, and it would take place at Stonefield Gardens, just not the way Claire expected. I knew I couldn't just show up at Claire's wedding. That would make me look petty, unstable, the very image she'd likely been feeding others about me for months. No, if I was going to confront her, it had to be on my terms, controlled, undeniable. So I reserved a private event at Stonefield Gardens, a date just 1 week before hers. Same location, different guest list. I called it a gathering of appreciation. No mentions of weddings or revenge, just a thank you to the people who had quietly supported me, and a reunion for those who'd seen the same side of Claire that I had. I sent invitations with no social media fanfare, no dramatic language, just warmth and honesty. And people responded. Within days, RSVPs came pouring in, from old college friends, neighbors, former coworkers, even a woman who had once been Claire's roommate and claimed Claire nearly got her fired by spreading rumors. Each name on the list felt like a thread pulling the truth out into the light. Meanwhile, I began to hear whispers about Claire's wedding. The venue, mine, was set, the guest list carefully filtered, and the dress, expensive. Very expensive. One boutique associate said Claire insisted on a custom Vera Vance gown, even though it wasn't in her budget. She said someone else would end up paying for it, the girl said with a shrug. She didn't seem worried. That was Claire. She never worried. She expected the world to catch her when she jumped. Thomas still hadn't contacted me, not even a word. I began to wonder if he felt relief, like he'd handed off the burden of being decent and could now hide behind Claire's noise. I tried to imagine him planning a wedding with her, watching her control every detail while pretending it was love. Maybe he didn't mind being controlled. Maybe that's what he'd wanted all along. Someone louder, bolder, unapologetic. Or maybe he was just too weak to resist her. At the same time, my relationship with my parents continued to deteriorate. My mother called once, asking why I was dragging this out and if I really planned to embarrass the family. I told her calmly that telling the truth wasn't the same as creating drama, but she didn't hear me. She never really had. As the day of my private event neared, I felt a strange mix of calm and anticipation. I wasn't doing this to humiliate Claire. I was doing it so I could finally stop carrying a silence that never belonged to me. Everyone always said Claire was the light in the room. I wanted to see what happened when she had to stand in a room full of people who saw her. I ordered a deep navy dress, not flashy, but elegant. I didn't want to compete. I just wanted to stand tall in my own story, in front of people who would finally know the whole truth. And Claire still didn't see it coming. The day of the event arrived quietly. There were no photographers, no decorations screaming for attention, just warm lights, soft music, and the calm dignity of Stonefield Gardens in the early evening. The venue I had once dreamed of walking through in a white dress now transformed into something deeper than ceremony. It was mine in a new way. Not for a marriage, but for something far more sacred. Truth. People came. More than I expected. Old friends who had drifted away. Colleagues who'd heard whispers over the years. Women Claire had wronged. A few men, too. One of them Mark Kettering, Natalie's ex. He approached me with a firm handshake and a quietly haunted look. "I didn't see it then," he said. "But I do now. You're not alone." As the evening unfolded, conversations buzzed gently around the garden. Nobody shouted. Nobody pointed fingers. But the air carried a sharpness, a shared understanding. I stood beneath the vine-covered archway and looked at them, these people who had each been pushed aside, minimized, dismissed. And now, here we were, together, not loud, not cruel, just present. Someone told me Claire had posted another photo that morning, a close-up of her ring, captioned, "1 week away from forever." The comments had been less generous this time, more probing. "Didn't this used to be Margaret's venue? Isn't this the same guy?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. What I didn't expect, though, was who showed up near the end of the evening. Thomas. He stood awkwardly near the edge of the garden, alone, hands in his pockets like a schoolboy, unsure of his assignment. I didn't approach him. He came to me. "I didn't know this was happening," he said, eyes darting toward the crowd. Claire didn't say anything. "Of course she didn't," I replied calmly. He shifted his weight. "Margaret, I just want to say I didn't plan for any of this to happen the way it did." I nodded once, slowly. "I believe that. That's part of the problem." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "You didn't plan. You just let it happen. That's how people like Claire win. Not because they're better, but because people like you don't stop them." He looked down, visibly shaken. "She's been different lately, paranoid, controlling. She asked if I'd seen you. I said no." "Then you lied." He didn't deny it. "I made my choices," he said, "and now I have to live with them." "Exactly," I replied, "and so does she." He left soon after. I didn't ask why he came. Maybe he was starting to see through Claire's glittering facade. Maybe he was hoping I'd rescue him from it. But I wasn't there to rescue anyone. I was there to let the truth breathe. The next morning, I woke up to 27 new messages, all from guests who had backed out of Claire's wedding. Claire called me 2 days before her wedding, not to apologize, not to ask questions, but to scream. "What did you do?" Her voice cracked like glass against metal. "Did you threaten people? Bribe them?" I stayed silent for a moment, letting the weight of her hysteria fill the space. "No," I said. "I told the truth. They chose for themselves." She let out a bitter laugh. "You always had a way of making people feel sorry for you, that pathetic little martyr act. But this? You've gone too far, Margaret. You've humiliated me." "No, Claire," I replied softly. "You did that yourself. I just stopped covering for you." She hung up without another word. For a long time, I stared at the screen, not out of sadness, but from the strange realization that I felt nothing. No heat, no rush, just clarity. Her rage no longer had a place inside me. That same evening, my father stopped by my house unannounced. He stood on the porch holding a small paper bag and looked more tired than I'd ever seen him. "I brought your favorite," he said quietly. "Lemon squares." We sat on the back steps in silence for a while, watching the wind stir the last of the summer leaves. He cleared his throat a few times before finally speaking. "I should have said something," he muttered. "To your mother, to Claire, to you." I didn't speak. I wanted to hear him say it without prompting. "She always said you were the strong one," he continued, looking straight ahead. "That you didn't need the attention, but that wasn't fair. We leaned too hard on your silence." A pause. "I saw what Claire did, long before the engagement. I just didn't want the mess. Didn't want to choose between you." "You still haven't," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say it anyway." He left before it got dark. He didn't ask for a hug, didn't linger. It wasn't a grand moment, but it mattered more than he probably realized. For once, he hadn't protected the wrong person. The next day, I received a message from a woman named Cheryl, Thomas's cousin. She had been invited to the wedding but chose not to go. "It didn't feel right," she wrote. Not after what I heard at your event. She added one more line before signing off. They deserve each other, but you deserved better from all of us. That night, Claire went silent on social media. No countdowns, no glittering photos, no quotes about fate. Just silence, the kind that comes before a storm. The day before Claire's wedding, I got a message from Thomas. It was short, just one line. I'm sorry, for all of it. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Later that morning, I heard from Cheryl again. She told me Thomas had moved into a hotel the night before and hadn't returned Claire's calls. Apparently, there had been a fight, loud enough that the neighbors heard shouting through the walls of their townhouse. Claire accused him of sabotaging the wedding by not defending her online. You're supposed to protect me, she reportedly screamed. Not stand there like some lost little boy. He told her she had created the mess, that people weren't pulling away because of rumors. They were pulling away because they'd finally seen her for who she was. He left before she finished yelling. Still, the wedding hadn't been canceled. At least, not yet. Claire was too proud for that, too determined to win, even if she had to drag herself across the finish line bleeding. That afternoon, I got a visit from someone I hadn't expected. Claire's maid of honor, Allison, a woman I'd barely spoken to in years. I'm sorry to show up like this, she said, standing nervously at my door. But I didn't know who else to talk to. I invited her in. She didn't sit. I've known Claire since college. We were close. I always saw the way she treated people, but I told myself it wasn't my business. Now I feel like I've spent years making excuses for a person who doesn't deserve them. She looked down at her phone. She's spiraling, accusing me of turning people against her, of being jealous, of talking to you. Have you? I asked. She hesitated. No, but I should have. There was a pause, and then she added, She's still going through with it, tomorrow, even though half the vendors are pulling out. The florist said they hadn't been paid in full. The cake was canceled. Her stylist quit last night. I nodded, letting it all sink in. She's going to blame everyone but herself, I said quietly. She already is, Allison replied. But she asked me to call you. She said, she wants you to see what you did. I laughed, not out of amusement, but disbelief. She thinks I want to watch her marry the man she stole from me? She thinks it'll hurt you. I looked her dead in the eyes. It won't. After Allison left, I sat in the quiet for a long time. No music, no television, just the hum of my own peace, a sound I hadn't heard in months. I wouldn't go to the wedding. I had no need to. Claire was already standing in front of the mirror, dressed in white and screaming at the reflection for not smiling back. Let her have her day. Let her wear her crown of thorns and pretend it was a veil. My guest list had spoken. Her silence had followed. And Thomas? He'd already started to drift. The morning of the wedding was oddly quiet. There were no hashtags, no filtered photos of mimosas or bridal slippers or elegant table settings. Not a single post from Claire, her bridesmaids, or even her mother, who had, until now, cheerfully reposted every shiny moment of the engagement. I didn't check my phone much that day. I went for a walk. I baked lemon muffins from an old recipe I hadn't used since college. I cleaned the windows, and I felt still. It wasn't until mid-afternoon that the messages started trickling in. From Allison, he didn't show. From Cheryl, confirmed. Thomas checked out of the hotel this morning. No one's seen him. From Natalie, the guests who did show up said Claire delayed the ceremony 2 hours before telling everyone it was postponed for private reasons. Then she locked herself in the bridal suite and started screaming at the planner. I didn't smile. It wasn't satisfying in the way people might expect. It was just inevitable. Claire's downfall wasn't dramatic. There was no single explosion, no grand confrontation, just a slow erosion, a careful disassembling of everything she built on the backs of other people. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I got a message from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Lynn, apparently a guest at the wedding. She wrote, I came today not knowing what to expect. Honestly, I didn't want to believe the stories. But then I saw how she treated the staff, how she cursed at her own friends. She blamed everyone for what happened, except herself. I wanted you to know. Some of us see her now, really see her. That was all I ever needed. Not revenge, not gloating, just to be seen for who I really was, and to have her finally seen too. I sat on my porch that night with a cup of tea and let the weight of it settle. The engagement that shattered me, the family that abandoned me, the sister who used me, all of it had finally burned out in the open. And from the ashes, I was still standing. The next morning, I got one final message. From Claire. It was only 3 words. "You ruined me." I didn't respond, because the truth was, she did that to herself. A week after the failed wedding, I found a small envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no name. Inside was a handwritten note on hotel stationery. "Margaret, I thought I was choosing freedom when I left you. Turns out I walked straight into a cage. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything. I just wanted you to hear it from me finally. Thomas." I folded the letter slowly and tucked it into the back of my journal. Not because I planned to reread it, but because some things are worth acknowledging before letting go. Closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's a quiet nod to yourself that you've already moved on. I never heard from Claire again, not directly, but whispers trickled in. That she had tried to reschedule the wedding, but no venue in town would touch it. That her stylist posted a story online about being screamed at and refused payment. That her job, the one she had always bragged about, quietly let her go weeks later. Something about reputation management. Still, I didn't gloat. There was nothing left to gain from her pain. I'd already reclaimed what mattered. Myself. I started walking more. Reading again. I signed up for a pottery class at the community center, where no one knew my story or expected anything from me. I laughed with strangers. I made new friends. I said yes to things I once would have declined just to avoid attention. I even ran into Allison one afternoon at a bookstore. She smiled and gave me a hug. "You look lighter," she said. "I am," I replied. And I meant it. One night, while clearing out old files from my laptop, I stumbled across the original wedding folder, spreadsheets, vendor quotes, engagement photos. I hovered over the trash icon for a moment, then deleted it all in one click. Not in anger, but because it no longer belonged in the life I was building. The pain had passed through me like a storm. It had taken some things with it. Illusions, people, the idea of what I thought my life should have been. But what remained was stronger, quieter, clearer. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. Not the woman left behind. Not the sister used as a stepping stone. I was simply Margaret, and that was more than enough.